And we now welcome in the head coach at Villanova. He is Kevin Willard. And Kevin, welcome. And I want to get to this right off the top because you've ignored this in every single interview that you've done since taking the Villanova job. Do you still only eat one meal per day?
Yeah, still only eat one meal a day, John. Gotta stay in shape, man. Young guys are coming after you. You're getting old. I just hit 50 in April, so try my best to stay in shape.
Now, here's the million-dollar question. If the new Pope, who has Villanova ties, texts you and says, I want to get together for breakfast, are you still only going to eat one meal a day?
No. I'll eat 12 meals a day if I get to meet the Pope. I'm excited. It's so cool. I'm excited. I think it's not only is it great for Villanova, I think it's great for the American church to have a Pope that was born in America. I just think it's going to do a lot for religion in this country. So I think it's really cool for Nova, but it's really cool for America in general.
Did you have more texts last week when it was released that the new Pope had ties to Villanova, or when you were involved with the Villanova job?
No, I've never received. I didn't know what was going on. I was driving home. I was driving back to Maryland to go home, and all of a sudden, like, my phone was just blowing up. I'm like, oh gosh, something happened. And then I saw it, and then all the photos and the memes and all that stuff. It was funny. It was awesome. But no, I've never received that many texts in my life.
Well, Kevin, let's get down to business right now. How would you describe your first month at Villanova?
Yeah, it's been great. Everyone in the Villanova community and the family has been phenomenal. We've obviously been busy. You get a job, and just like everybody else, whether you've been at a job or you get a new job, you're pretty much either recruiting your roster or rebuilding your roster this year. So really proud of my staff and everybody that just kind of jumped in and just try to put the best roster together. And I think we put a really good roster together.
Well, you have access now when you take over a program to immediate eligibility through the transfer portal. But now also the flip side of that is you could have to replace an entire roster. Is it harder or easier taking over a program now versus maybe 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely easier now, John, just because, again, the transfer portal makes it, although it's made everything crazy and it's made everything really difficult, it does give you a chance to immediately solve some issues that you have with your roster. And again, you probably wouldn't lose as many kids if the transfer portal wasn't here. So it's probably a little bit different because maybe not as many kids are leaving your team. With everyone just being able to transfer at any time, if in the past, if someone had transferred already, they wouldn't have been able to leave. And so your roster, you're probably only going after 4 or 5 guys instead of signing 10. And so I think that's the biggest difference.
What's the biggest thing you know now about being the Villanova head coach that you didn't know prior to taking the job?
Oh, man. I knew how strong this culture was. Just from seeing it for the 12 years at Seton Hall and going up against guys, like Jalen and Arch and all those guys. But I didn't know just the brotherhood and how strong and how much the former players love this place and want this place to be great. I always knew, I knew how strong it was, again, from the outside. But once you get into the inside and you really start to talk to these guys and meet them and see how much they love this program, how much they love Coach Wright, it's blown me away with how much the former players love this place.
Well, the guys you're referencing, and obviously the era that you're referencing, was synonymous with one of the best programs at the time in college basketball. But you were obviously hired for a reason. So the million-dollar question is, how do you get the brand back at Villanova?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's a good question, John, because, again, I think if you look at the 16 championship, the 18 championship, the guys on that, they had guys that redshirted. Mikal Bridges redshirted. I mean, he's starting for the Knicks, and just think about those guys that had gone through there. Jalen Brunson, those guys were like 3-4 year guys. Some guys were 5s. You look, so I think the biggest thing is just trying to get back to that identity, that culture. The roster that I built this past April wasn't all old guys. We went young. I wanted to bring young guys in here that we could build this back up, guys that wanted to be at Villanova. So kind of getting back to that identity of really, building and retaining and making sure that we have roster retention, because that's really how Jay did it better than anybody at that time, was getting guys that were 3, 4, 5-year guys that were the culture. I mean, they were everything. And so that's kind of what we're trying to get back to.
Kevin, you had referenced that Mikal Bridges redshirted. There was a number of players during that run at Villanova who redshirted: Dante DiVincenzo, Amari Spellman, Eric Pascal, Phil Booth, because of immediate eligibility, because of obviously name, image, and likeness right now. Is it going to be more difficult to have that piece in your rebuild, that you're going to be older and more seasoned than everybody?
Yeah, I mean, John, I think the big thing is, and kids are starting to figure this out. If I was a freshman now coming in and I wasn't a top 25 kid, a top 20 kid, I'd want a redshirt. I'd want to go somewhere where I could redshirt and develop and get ready to play, because you're going to earn so much more money in your 5th year than you are than just 4 years of college. And a lot of kids are starting to look at it. I mean, mostly agents are looking at it. Agents are advising the high school kids like, hey, this is a good spot for you. I like the way they develop kids. Let's go there. Let's give them a 2-year commitment, see what happens after year 2, and then we'll hit the portal and hit the bank. So it makes a lot of sense for kids to redshirt, just because it's almost like you almost want the old transfer rule to be back, because it'd be more beneficial for kids because they would get more money in the 5th year. So I think we can do it. I think we have a great group of kids coming in. We have some guys that want a redshirt, which is great, and then you can build it that way.
Kevin, you referenced at your press conference that this is Jay Wright's program and you are now the steward, and you talked about the friendship that the two of you had when you were both coaches in the Big East. Those Seton Hall Villanova games, it felt like every single game was 60-60 at the under 4 timeout, and it came down to the final possession. I'm curious, how do two people craft a genuine friendship when they're competing against each other? They're going head to head in the fiercest of battles.
It's really built out of respect. I had so much respect for not only the way Jay teams played, but the guys he recruited and how they played. I told this story the other day about Angel Legato missed a layup at the buzzer to win, and I think it was the semifinal game. And Josh Hart came running down the opposite end of the floor and picked up. It was the first guy picking up Angel, and gave him a hug and told him it's going to be all right, and actually saw him after the game too. Like moments like that just show you how special the culture of Villanova was. And I think Jay respected how my guys played. I had a great group from 2015 on. I had year after year, I just had great guys, great players, guys that played the right way, played hard. And I think Jay really respected that. And I think what's really cool about the Big East is you play everybody twice. So you really get to know and see the ins and outs of a program. It's why Ed Cooley and I are such good friends. I have so much respect for Ed, the way, he can run the flex at you. Then the next thing you know, he's going to run a quick hitter for a 3 for his 4-man. You just get you see these guys on twice a year on the road recruiting. We're all generally located, Philly and Seton Hall, or Nova and Seton Hall are an hour and 20 minutes away. I just made the drive the other day. So, just total respect for Jay and what he built here.
Well, you mentioned that every Big East team is going to play each other twice. That means twice a year now, Kevin Willard is going to lead Villanova against Seton Hall. What do you think it's going to be like emotionally, not just playing Seton Hall, but going back to Newark and the Prudential Center, coaching against the Pirates?
Well, I mean, first, it's going to be I'm so proud of Shaheen and the job Shah's done as a head coach. He's grown so much from when he first started with me, and now to see, forget the run at St. Peter's, to handle the adversity he went through last year, kind of navigating NIL there. I think he's done a phenomenal job. I think he's positioned himself this year to have such a better team. But going back, it's going to be emotional. I still have a text thread with about 12 guys, that all Seton Hall donors and friends, that I probably talk to them 5, 6, 7 times a day. I was just up there playing golf with a good buddy of mine. It's going to be, I'll be honest with you, the first time I go back, John, I'll be very emotional because I love the place. I'm actually wearing a pair of Seton Hall practice shorts right now, to be honest with you. It's a great place, great people. I loved it there. My kids were raised there. Just phenomenal people. It really is. So it'll be emotional, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, and again, those Seton Hall Villanova games, now close to 9-10 years ago, were part of the fabric of this new rendition of the Big East. And so was the rise at Villanova. And Kevin, before you were hired, one of the things that I was very, very open about and opinionated about was whoever Villanova hires should not be held to the standard of the last 10 years of Jay Wright, because that run may never be replicated again in the history of college basketball. But the landscape, the Villanova job, and the current landscape. In your opinion, what should be the annual expectation for Villanova?
No, I mean, I think this is a place where, winning championships is what it's all about. And this is what, our fan base expects. It's what I expect. It's what the former players, it's what Jay expects. I mean, he really expects this to be a championship level program. Can you do it year in, year out nowadays with the way it is? And can you get guys to stay 5 years and have runs like, Chris Jenkins, Josh Hart, and all those guys did? It's going to be much more difficult, and it's probably it's not realistic. You just look at the landscape, and, I looked at the Houston team this year was probably as good as any Houston team I've seen. And we played Florida, and Florida, you go up and all of a sudden you see what Todd did in 3 years there, 4 years there is ridiculous. So I just think it's every year now, especially since everyone has money, I think it's going to be a lot. You can, VCU can pay a kid $2 million, and the kid's going to go there. So it's going to be more difficult. I think the long tenured runs, I don't think you're going to see that quite as much. But our expectations are to win a championship.
Kevin, now that you've experienced both as a head coach, what are the differences in being the head coach at a basketball school versus a school that has football?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest difference, John, and it's really simple. It's August, September, October, November. I think football schools are, as they should be, solely focused on football. And I think that's obviously it's a huge money driver. It's a huge train. I mean, the Big Ten is a great conference from a football standpoint, from a basketball standpoint. But for those really from spring practice on to probably December, the only thing that matters is football. And it's rightfully so, as it should be. What's really cool about being at the Big East or a basketball-only school, and I had this conversation with Mark Few last year, was every week we have weekly meetings or 3 hours long about, all right, how do we improve basketball? And we're doing that now in May. So it's something that it's our game. It's what we're passionate about. We have a great football program at Nova. It's phenomenal, but we're in a basketball conference. So it's something that just drives the boat every day. People are going to work trying to think, how can we win a championship? And in football schools, as they should, they're trying to think about how they win a championship in football up until probably late December.
Well, I know you're closing the book on another chapter of your coaching career, and people who coach a long time have different chapters. When you are playing golf and having a drink years from now and you look back on your final season at Maryland, will you be able to enjoy the fact that you took Maryland to the Sweet 16, or do you think you'll look back at some of the instability in the athletic department there at the end?
No, absolutely. This was I actually had a conversation with my father the other night about this was the most fun I've ever had coaching. That team last year was so enjoyable to be around. Going to the Sweet 16, arguably going to have a top 10 draft pick in Derek Queen, who's going to be a monster NBA player. I'll be sitting back retired while he's still playing in the NBA, so I'll be going to watch him play. So just a group, looking at what happened with Rodney and Jacoby and how much money they got paid this year in the portal. I'm ecstatic about that. I think that I'm like, I got a top 10 draft pick and I got two guys going in the portal who got paid. I mean, I think I did a really good job. So I loved Maryland. I loved everything about it. And, I will never forget this. I will never forget this year. This year would be by far the most fun I've ever had coaching.
Kevin, as we transition out of this new period of college sports and conferences are coast to coast, you went and played at Oregon and Washington last year. How different is it going to be just in terms of running a program, scheduling for a program, when now you're in a league like the Big East where the geographics are not a major point of really emphasis?
Yeah, scheduling. You know, the travel wasn't that bad, John. It's to be honest, with you, going out to Oregon and Washington. The time we did it, I didn't love the time that we went out coming off the Christmas break, but the travel's not that bad. I tell you, the travel what got a little bit long was probably like trips to Nebraska, trips to Iowa, a little bit longer than you think, coming from Maryland. But I think scheduling is everything. I think you're going to see the change in MTEs. I don't think guys are going to be playing that nearly as many MTEs. I think everyone wants to play in the Players Era tournament, things like that. If you're not getting paid for and your kids aren't getting it, there's no point in playing 3 games in a row someplace and beating up your team and beating up your players unless you're not getting paid for it now. And I just think that whole thing has changed dramatically. And I think you're going to see a lot more home and homes, getting more big campus games, getting more people attendance, more money flowing in instead of going someplace and playing all these games. But I do look forward to obviously St. John's and the Big East tournament. Providence is a great place to play. It's local, and going back, obviously Seton Hall is local. So from that standpoint, I'm looking forward to that.
Well, Kevin, we know that you guys are going to open the season against BYU next year in Las Vegas, who's going to be, a top 10 team to start next season. And we also know that Villanova has certain obligations with the Big Five that they're going to have to play every single year. Aside from that, what will the non-conference schedule look like for Villanova in year 1 under Kevin Willard?
Yeah, we're still working on that, John. We got tied into an MTE that was set up last year that they had contracted. So I'm trying to work around the MTE, which is eating up a huge chunk, because then we go from the MTE right into some of the Big Five games. So I'm trying to figure out the schedule a little bit. I know we're trying to start 3 big home and homes, one at home, 2 on the road, and then flip flop obviously the year after that. Trying to set up some good non-conference games. Going to try to play in the Prudential Center or the Barclays in December. So the schedule will be good. We got tied into an MTE a home MTE that was a little weird. That's eaten up a huge chunk of the schedule that we're just trying to navigate a little bit. So I think it'll be a good non-conference schedule. We're still not done with it yet.
All right, and obviously a big reason why you're not done with your schedule is you were spending the last month trying to put together a roster. Give us the early snapshot of the roster you think you put together for 25-26.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think, we have some really good athleticism at the 2, 3, and 4. I think we can play certain guys in a whole bunch of different positions, which I'm most ecstatic about. The 2 guys that stayed, Tyler Perkins and Matt Hodge, I think are guys that I'm really excited about Tyler, because I think he's going to really blossom in a little bit more of an up-tempo style that we're going to play. And I think, I recruited Matt out of high school. I was down at us in Nova, and he went there. And so I know how good he is. He's worked really hard in a difficult redshirt year. Mm-hmm. Love the guard play that we brought in. I think, we brought everyone we tried to bring in was someone that, it wasn't a duplicate. It's someone that we could play at multiple positions, play a lot quicker, go a lot deeper than obviously I played last year. So I'm excited about the roster we put together. I think it's deep and it's young. It's a team that we can retain and get better and build on. And Nova fans can know a guy like Malachi Palmer for a couple years and see how good of a player he is and see how talented he is. Love our freshmen coming in. I got 2 unbelievable freshman guards who I think are going to be dynamite. Can take over at any time, go one-on-one, create for everybody. So again, I think we have a really balanced roster. We didn't go into the portal and try to hit, sexy home runs. We try to get guys that are going to fit the way I wanted to play a little bit more up tempo, play a little bit more, I wouldn't say positionless basketball, but have guys that could play 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 positions.
Kevin, we're in an interesting time right now in college athletics. And, many people believe, obviously, that the basketball centric schools are going to be at an advantage. We're going to wait and see how that plays out. But how much did being at a basketball centric school really put you over the edge in terms of your decision making moving forward as you were debating whether or not to leave Maryland for Villanova?
Yeah, I think that obviously had a huge part to do with it. And I don't think anyone really knows what's going on with the House case. I don't know if anyone thinks it's the right move. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's the right move for college sports. I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on athletic departments, puts a lot of pressure on fundraising, making sure that you don't have to cut sports or make sports go club. I really truly believe that the NCAA tournament money should be going back into the basketball programs 100%. And I think that's where we should be paying the players. That way we wouldn't take away from opportunities from other sports. I don't know if we could ever get to that. Same thing with football. I think all the football money should just flow right back into all the football schools, and then you can pay the football players out of that money. I think that's the model we have to get to somehow. If we don't get to that model, then I think 2 or 3 years of you're talking about schools paying $24 million out of your athletic budget. I don't know how schools do that. Not going forward. So I do think whatever happens with the House case, I think it's going to be a huge adjustment for if you're a football school, if you're a basketball school. There's so many things that can alter name, image, and likeness in the transfer portal. But to be honest with you, John, I think we're almost at the point where we got to start over. And come up with rules and come up with, a freshman salary cap almost. I think we have to, negotiate. I know it's hard because they're 16, 17-year-old kids, but I think for the long-term success of college basketball, college football, and college sports in general. I was watching baseball, the baseball last night, the college baseball, which is so much fun. Those kids, play with so much passion. It's so fun to watch that. I just think, I hope we haven't messed this up to the point where, there's only 2 sports and, the money's it's just too much. I just think we have to come up with a better system.
Well, the good thing is for how unstable things are off the court and off the field in college athletics, the games have been as good as they've been in a long time because players don't necessarily have to try and play professional right now to make money. But, as we look ahead to the Big East, you mentioned you were in this league for 12 years. This new rendition of the Big East has had consistency from programs like Marquette and Creighton, but the big brands of the Big East have never all hit at the same time. UConn, Villanova, St. John's, and Georgetown, since this new rendition of the Big East started, have never all been good at the same time. What could happen for this league if all of those programs hit?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think what Danny's done at UConn, and I got a lot of flack for it when they let UConn into it, and I kind of knew. I mean, they had a great coach in Danny Hurley, but I knew what the Big East would do for UConn and bringing them back in because I played against when I was a player. I was there. I saw firsthand the players that they got and how good they were, and going all the way back to the Kemba run. Being in the area for that. Danny's done such a great job at UConn, and I think Ed's starting to turn the corner right now at Georgetown. He took over a really tough job, and even with getting the transfer portal and guys immediately eligible, they had 6-7 years where they really struggled, and I think Ed's done a phenomenal job of getting good young kids in there. They're playing the way he does, and obviously Coach Pitino at St. John's. I think this year was. I had more fun watching that than I did any part of college sports, just because I understand St. John's and New York City and the buzz that he created, and I just thought it was so special to see St. John's back in the Garden, especially during the Big East tournament. I mean, that when UConn, Villanova, Georgetown, and St. John's is rolling, the Big East tournament is nuts. I mean, it's just something. It's nuts as it is, but it just gives that extra juice. So I think you have really good guys at all those schools. And I think, what's really, I think, important, John, what most people don't talk about is the job Shock has done at Marquette. Creighton had what the value that those schools have added from the Midwest. And, you go out to the Midwest now and you have, in Big Ten territory, and, people are talking about the Big East. And so I think, the job that those guys have done in the Midwest has really added so much value to the Big East because it brings a whole nother demographic to the Midwest, which, if you go play Nebraska on a Sunday night at 5:00, there's going to be 16,000 people in that arena going crazy. Midwest is so passionate about college basketball. So they've done a tremendous job of bringing immense value to the Big East.
Kevin, you referenced obviously Coach Pitino's season at St. John's, and you've been very open throughout your coaching career that it's almost like you have two father figures with him and your own father, who is a great coach. Knowing obviously what you know and working under him, both in the NBA and in college, and watching how good he is right now at the age he is, which is past 70, how much longer do you think Coach Pitino can coach?
Oh, man. You know what, John? Until he wants, and he can go as long as he wants. There might, he's got like 13 grandkids now. There might come a time where he might want to spend a whole lot more time, watching Richard coach at Xavier or be with his grandkids. But from an energy standpoint, from a passionate standpoint, to this day, there's no one like Rick Pitino, and there never will be anyone like Rick Pitino. It's very hard for people to understand his energy, and it's been like that since the first day I walked into the Boston Celtics practice facility to the last day I worked with him at Louisville, to seeing him go back to Iona and immediately get that thing going. There's no level you can put on his passion, his enthusiasm. He's still old school. He still loves to coach the game and get kids better. And I think that's why his kids play so hard for him, is that he still does individual instruction 8, 9. He's on the floor.
Yeah.
There's no head coaches don't do that anymore. Like, everyone's got workout guys and development guys and this dude and that dude. You got Rick Pitino. And take away the X's and O's, which obviously you don't do what he does if you're not an elite X and O guy. But he is elite passion. And he loves the game of basketball. He loves his players. So what he's doing to Richard, I think Richard was on this a couple weeks ago, he'll tell you there's no one that can match his passion, his energy, and his enthusiasm.
Well, final thing here for you. I know that you have yet to begin, summer workouts, which are even more critical right now because you're putting in all terminology and things like that with new players. But regardless of wins and losses, what are your biggest things that you want to accomplish in your first year as a head coach at Villanova?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is really embrace this culture, get everyone back on board about what Villanova basketball is all about. And I think the biggest thing for me is, we're going to play faster. That's probably the biggest thing. And again, not super fast, or not that Kyle played slow or Jay played slow, but just picking up the tempo a little bit and getting everybody to kind of understand the way we're going to play. I thought at Maryland we did a really good job of establishing tempo in my first year with Jameer Young. I thought Jameer did a phenomenal job of kind of establishing our culture, and I think that's kind of what I'm looking forward to do here at Villanova is, get these guys to understand how hard we have to play, how hard you have to work to play fast. I mean, I think that's the thing that I look at Jacoby and Rodney this year. I think the first 8 games are all looking at me like, man, this wasn't what I signed up for early on. And then they got it and obviously had a phenomenal year. So I think that's my biggest thing is just get this fan base to understand we're going to play a little bit faster. We're going to play a little bit speedier, especially on the defensive end. And really embrace the guys that wanted to be here at Villanova. Just like, like I'm watching the Knicks every night, and those guys are texting, and I'm texting back with those guys, and they're more interested in who we're getting in the portal than anything else. So just getting everyone to really feel that love again about Villanova.
Kevin, appreciate a couple of minutes. Congratulations on the job, and as always, look forward to staying connected with you along the way.
Thanks, John. Great to be with you, man.
You got it. That's Villanova head coach Kevin Willard. I'm Jon Rothstein. This is, again, a reminder to subscribe to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page.